Hi, I'm Valerie Khoo, and I'm so thrilled to be talking to Nat Amoore today. Nat is a successful children's book author, and I really wanted to chat to her because in just a couple of short years, she's gone from not being an author to being one of the most popular middle grade authors around. Her latest book is We Run Tomorrow, but it wasn't that long ago at all. She released her very first book, Secrets of a Schoolyard Millionaire, which was published in multiple countries. And she also published her very popular book, The Right Way to Rock. Nat is constantly booked out for events and school visits and festivals and talks and so on. So let's have a chat to Nat Amoore about her secrets to becoming a successful author. Thanks so much for joining us today, Nat.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm quite honored.
Oh, I'm so excited to chat to you, not only about your latest book, We Run Tomorrow, but also about your author journey so far. You've just gone from strength to strength and success to success, and you're killing it. So before we get into all of that, your latest book, We Run Tomorrow, tell us, in case there's some listeners who haven't got a copy yet, what is it about?
Okay, so We Run Tomorrow is about four best friends who they are living on the same street together, and they're very, very tight, close friendship. And then the adults around them start making some decisions that are going to tear them apart. So they decide to take their future into their own hands. And they find out that the comic book that they're obsessed with is being made into a Hollywood blockbuster feature on the Gold Coast. And they decide they're going to run away from home, audition for the main roles, which are these four kid superheroes, and that's the answer to all their problems because they'll be able to stay together forever once they're the screensavers. Da, da, da.
Now, how did this idea come into your head?
So weirdly, when I first start writing a book, I'm a big film buff, and so I often have like a film in mind. So when I wrote Secrets of a Schoolyard Millionaire, I had Home Alone in mind. And even though the concept of the films are completely different, that's sort of the feel I was going for. Kids taking on bad guys and like kind of owning the world on their own. So when I wrote this one, I really had a sense of Stand By Me. So this friendship that was super tight and that they had to get somewhere on some kind of mission, crossed with Planes, Trains and Automobiles. So that comedic element of how do you get from like point A to point B to point C, especially when you're only 11 years old. So that's sort of the feel that I had to begin with. And then the idea came from, I was down in Melbourne on the Maurice Saxby Creative Development Program with the CBCA, which is a bit of a tongue twister, but was a great program. And I had on the same program was a guy called Mike Barry, who was a graphic novelist. And he started talking to me about graphic novels. And I was like, yeah, I used to love comic books when I was a kid, but I'd sort of moved away, and he kind of brought me back. And it reminded me how much I loved comics as a kid. And that's how that sort of comic book element came into it.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about the formation and the gestation and the creation of this idea. Can you give us a little bit of a timeline as to when you thought of the idea, how long it took you to write, how long it was to edit it? Because presumably a lot of this also happened during the pandemic or the lockdowns and that sort of thing. Is that right?
Sort of. So this one has a bit of a weird life because when I signed my first book, Secrets of a Schoolyard Millionaire, in 2019, I actually signed a 2-book deal with Penguin. And the second contract was open. It could be anything. It didn't have to be related to Secrets of a Schoolyard Millionaire. And so I actually wrote this one. And then,
you wrote this after Secrets?
Yeah, so this was the second book I wrote. And then Penguin, so the idea came up pretty much as soon as I had written Millionaire, like what was going to be next was when this started sort of happening. Then I wrote it to fulfill that second contract. So that would have been, I guess, in like 2019, I wrote this. And then because Millionaire was doing so well, Penguin was kind of like, this feels slightly older. We'd love to have something that the fans of Millionaire can step straight into. And that's where the power of positive pranking came from. So this got kind of bumped. Then they were like, hey, how about one more? So then The Right Way to Rock came. And then so this one got bumped again. So even though I wrote it in 2019, I'm pretty sure, I didn't look at it again until about a year ago when we started editing it. So it was really interesting to come back to it. I've never had that opportunity to sit on something for a while. You know, there's that whole put it away in your bottom drawer and come back to it. I've never had that opportunity because everything's been like boom, 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 write it, get it out, write it, get it out. So it was really, really lovely to read it for the first time after not looking at it for honestly, I guess like 2, almost maybe 3 years. And it was like reading someone else's story for the first time. It was such a joy. And then so then I think we were in edits for like about a year.
And so when Penguin said it's open, write anything you want, they kind of actually meant write anything you want, but very specifically for this age group.
Yeah, I mean, I should say it was a middle grade contract. So the only, because at that time there was a bit of a bidding war going on, and all the other, so everyone had kind of stepped up, everyone who was still in the run had stepped up to a 2-book contract, but the other publishers specifically wanted a sequel to Millionaire. Whereas Penguin was like another middle grade, but whatever you want kind of thing. So, and I think when I first wrote this, because it's a bit of a weird concept, it's a novel, graphic novel hybrid, I was still very new with Penguin, and they were a bit like, this is a bit of a weird thing to do for someone who's not very, I'm putting words in Penguin's mouth. I don't know if this is the case, but
sure. This is what you think that they think.
Yeah, I think they were a bit, like just sort of like, but the good thing about it getting bumped, and I think it's a better book because it came out last for a multitude of reasons. But one is that I hope, built up this sort of confidence in Penguin that I could do something that was a bit weird now and a bit like not really fitting into a perfect category, and that they were like, yeah, okay, I think you can give you that, a go at doing that, and had some faith. So yeah, it was good.
And in case there's some listeners who aren't familiar with the concept of middle grade, can you define what age group that is?
No. I mean, look, I think generally it's 8 to 12, but I also think like within that, there's sort of like, I would say my first 3 books can go across that and skew even a bit younger if it's a strong reader. Like I've had 6-year-olds read Millionaire, have it read to them, and I've had 7-year-old strong readers reading Millionaire. So there's nothing in the books, there's no kind of content that isn't appropriate for younger kids. It's just the kind of thickness and the word count and the no pictures. Whereas I think We Run Tomorrow skews the older end, like 9+. So it's weird because then I've actually had sort of teenagers who are reading it and really digging it as well. Whereas I would say this one has content that like I wouldn't say it's appropriate for like 6-year-olds, So but yeah, I guess 8 to 12 upper primary is a good way to think of middle grade. But I mean, I do find sometimes those lines, you can push them and they can get a bit blurry as well.
So when you're writing then, do you have a 8-year-old or do you have a reader of a certain age in mind?
Not really. I think like, especially when I started, I didn't. I just wrote, I mean, I'm just a giant child. Like I think anyone who knows me will definitely agree with that. And so I write stuff that I probably would think I would have loved as a kid, but I probably just still love now. And then I think Penguin really helped me work out where it fitted and edit it to make sure that it did go one way or another. But yeah, I have them in mind in the sense of I have a reader, I want a reader to enjoy it, but I'm not really going like, oh, this is the language you use for a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old. Like I'm not really doing that because what I've discovered, especially over the last 4 years, is like there's some 7-year-olds who are reading like 90,000 word novels. Like it's very hard. Like I want it to be appropriate for kids. I'm not going to put, inappropriate stuff in there. But I also know that there's a lot of wiggle room when it comes to who the book actually ends up in the hands of, and that's fine with me. Like I write the book and whoever it finds. I have a lot of adult readers as well. So,
Well, speaking of that, because as adults, we all kind of have a leaning to a particular reading age in children's books, right? And you've just, obviously yours is middle grade. I know that, my partner's is definitely the fart and bum jokes of an 8-year-old. I know that some people just they're 14-year-olds, they're absolutely, without a doubt, young adult. I'm probably 5-year-old. I'm a picture book fan. Yeah, I mean, I get emotionally impacted by picture books. So what do you think influences that age in adults?
For me, I mean, I can't talk for everybody, but for me, I remember everything about being like 10. It's just like when I write, I'm not like putting myself in the headspace of a kid. No, I'm just like, I never left. Like, I'm just like, I have such clear memories, and a lot of them are in my books, of what it felt like to meet your best friend for a first time, what it felt like to feel powerless as a 10-year-old because like adults were deciding everything for you. I still sometimes have those feelings. But I think, I'm just really emotionally connected with that age. And I don't know if that means that that's where I found my personality the most, or it was like a pivotal time in my life, or why I'm so connected to it. But I don't have a lot of connections to being 5. I don't really remember that age group. I don't really, whereas I can close my eyes and be inside my 10-year-old self and be so connected to it that the writing is really natural. It doesn't feel like I'm trying to put on someone else's shoes. I'm just writing. All my books have me as a 10-year-old in them, without a doubt, like lots of it.
Your books have protagonists who are girls, who are boys, who are, do you find it at all challenging, or you find it really easy just to write whatever gender the characters are?
Yeah, because I don't put a lot of weight in the gender. Like, I actually think that a lot of my characters are, like, of course they have a gender, but they're kind of a little bit genderless in a way. Like, and I think that's just sort of how I feel about, like, I'm a big believer in all books are for everybody, all stories are for everybody, like, and so because I don't put a lot of weight in that, I don't, like, I also talk to kids when I do schools and stuff about how I don't very often describe what my characters look like. And when it comes to the front cover, the publisher's always like, oh, what does the main character look like? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, so there's a lot of things that I sort of, I like to keep my books appealing to as many people as possible. And yeah, I just don't really feel like there's so much difference, especially as kids, in those characters. So I feel like a lot of my characters could be almost anybody and it would still work. So yeah, I again, it's so funny. I really wish I could dissect what I do a lot, but I just kind of go like, all my main characters have a lot of Nat in them, and so I've plucked bits of my personality and plonked them in these characters. So whether they're boys or girls kind of seems a bit irrelevant in the end.
Yes, it's interesting that you say a lot of your characters have a lot of Nat in them, because you are this really high energy person and a high energy writer. We Run Tomorrow sets a cracking pace from the opening scene. What do you do to keep that pace going? Not only to keep the pace going, but how do you determine what adventures they're going to go on? Do you determine it beforehand and then I'm going to write the adventures, or as you go?
Yeah, so I guess this is that whole kind of like plotter or pantser sort of conversation. For me, the most enjoyable part of writing is that first draft. Like, I am so happy. I actually hate editing. I'm not great at structure in just my general life, let alone when it comes to writing. So when I write a book, I know how it starts and I know how it ends. And I most often have no clue what's going to happen in the middle. And that is the joy to me. It's the discovery of where my characters are going. And because I'm a film buff and a very visual person, the way I write is a film playing out in my head and my hands trying to keep up describing what's happening. And sometimes the characters do things that I never expected. Like, I'll be in the middle of writing and I'll be like, oh, okay, you did that. All right, cool. And it's really like I'm experiencing it as they do. So I'll have I know they definitely need to get somewhere, otherwise I just go off sideways. So I definitely need an end that I'm heading towards. But that journey in between is very, very freeform. And then I go back afterwards and go, okay, well, there's a whole side scene and adventure they went on that has nothing to do with the story and that needs to come out or whatever. But I think, yeah, my energy is very reflective of me as a person. And sorry, my writing is very reflective of me as a person.
And your energy.
Yeah. Well, I think the adventure and the energy in the books is like, that's how I live my life. I'm like, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And so that kind of, comes out in the stories.
So let's go back to that first draft of We Run Tomorrow, because you wrote it quite a while ago and then it kind of resurfaced 2 years later. So let me just check first, when you wrote it, that first draft, that was first draft, right? The thing that resurfaced was first draft or several drafts in? Yeah.
Like it was my first draft to the publisher.
Yeah.
Which
okay.
Usually is my kind of like maybe second.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you reread it and then you said it was in edits for about a year. During that time, now I want to just touch on, because you said, oh, I'm no good at structure, but that can't be true because you've got several very successful books. So what happens, we'll take We Run Tomorrow. What happened in the edit period in that time? Did you have to restructure things? Like what sorts of things did you have to edit?
So you're right. I shouldn't say I'm no good at structure, because I have an innate sense of storytelling that comes from lots of reading and lots of watching movies. And I think I used to write for screen, and there's nothing like, screen is so structured, even compared to books, So you're right. I absolutely shouldn't say that, because I think it's innate in me. So when I write a story, even a first draft, I'm a bit lucky because that storytelling is so strong in me that first draft will have quite a good structure. I guess what I meant is, like, I shouldn't say structure, I should say planning. I'm not very good at planning, and I don't do a lot of it. I rely on that innate storytelling where I understand about, beginning, middle, and end, and what has to happen in between, and highs and lows, and action falling, and all that kind of stuff is very much just, even if I'm telling you a story at the pub, I'm going to be using all that, So yeah, I should say planning I don't do. Structure is innate. And so I've been really lucky so far. I would say all of my books haven't been torn apart structure wise. So I've spoken to a lot of authors who kind of, they write a first draft and then it all gets turned upside down and chapters get moved around and the beginning becomes the end. And I've never had that. And I think that's because that structure comes quite naturally to me. The edits are much more about making sure the character in my head is fully on the page for the reader, that the relationships are really strong. That's always kind of the focus. And also that it's like the publisher does help me make sure that it is appropriate and fits into the age group that we're aiming for. Because sometimes I'm like, everything's appropriate. And they're like, that's not.
So you are a film buff. You see your story play out visually in your head, and then your fingers in the keyboard try and keep up. But what I'm trying to understand is that is such a visual thing, and yet you don't really know what your characters look like. So what do you see in your head when it's visually playing out?
I know, it's so strange. I think to be honest with you, and this is going to sound super egotistical, I think all of my characters look like me in my head. I think, like, honestly, I think it's true. It's it's kind of hard to describe, but because I think for me to really get an honest sense of self into my characters, even though I would say my characters are all very different from my books, my main characters, there has to be an element of me in each one of them to ground them and make them feel really real. And I think, like anybody, I'm a very, like, everybody sees like the fun, clowny, happy Nat, but like everybody, I'm a multifaceted person. I have, I get sad. I've had hard things in my life that I've gone through. I get scared. I get confused by things. And so I just cherry pick parts of my personality for characters. And I say, okay, you're going to have this piece. But then, of course, I'm going to build an entire thing around that character that's not me. And they do a whole bunch of things that I wouldn't do you know, they're usually much cleverer than me. It's like, oh, this is the person I wish I could be. But that's what grounds me to it. So in my head, I think they do kind of look a little bit like me a lot. Yeah, I'm the star of every story.
All right.
Yeah.
So when you were saying everyone sees the fun, happy, you know, very, really vibrant Nat, in case there are listeners who haven't yet seen Nat in action, go look at her YouTube videos and you'll really see Nat, the fun, happy, very vibrant, very energetic Nat. Now, Nat is like that naturally, but she also, you know, for any teachers and librarians who are booking authors for schools, oh my goodness, your students are in for a ride. So go check her out on her YouTube videos or whatever, to see the energy she brings to a school appearance or a talk or whatever. So on that point, you, out of a lot of people I know, are so busy with appearances, with author appearances, which obviously kids authors do more author appearances or have the opportunity to do more author appearances than adult authors. Before you started on your author journey and you just knew, oh, I want to be a middle grade author, did you find it appealing that you were going to be able to also do school visits and author appearances, or is that something that kind of came later with the job? And what do you like about it? Because you clearly do.
Yeah, so a bit of both. So I used to be an entertainment manager at hotel resorts. So a lot of emceeing, a lot to do with kids, a lot of interactions with kids. It was appealing, but at the same time, I didn't know what it was. So I liked the idea of being up in front of kids and, you know, being wacky and zany and having fun and, you know, sort of performing, and then that being like a little bit educational and all that kind of stuff. But I'd never seen an author appearance. So I actually snuck into the primary school days of the Sydney Writers Festival the year before Millionaire came out, or the year Millionaire came out, sorry, for the sole purpose of being like, what does an author actually do when they go, you know, what like, I got the idea that you got up in front of kids and like talked about your books, but like, what does that look like? And that was really good because that year there was a real vast kind of array. I mean, Oliver Pomervan was there, and he's kind of, you know, that kind of wacky, crazy comedy style. And then there was, Deborah Balla was performing, and then there was some people who were really like literary and soft-spoken and calm and went really deep into the themes of their books. And I'm like, okay, that's like another style. So I learned a lot. Like I've learned heaps over the last few years. So I was excited about it, but I also was didn't really know what it was, but learned very quickly. And do I like it? Yeah, I obviously I love it. And I think one of the things I love most is just being able to connect with the kids and connect with the readers. But also, I mean, everybody has their own approach when it comes to presenting to kids. And mine is get the kids to love me and be excited about me. And in turn, they will be excited about books, whether it be mine or someone else's. Because obviously when I speak to the younger kids, I don't really talk about my books. Like I just, you know, if I do cater to and stuff, I'm talking about other people's books. But if I can get kids excited about just reading in general, then I'm stoked.
Now, there are some people or aspiring authors who love to write children's books and would love to, you know, make a career out of it, but kind of are so stressed at the thought of having to go to school visits or being in or performing in a sense in front of children. Do you think that they can carve out a successful career as a children's author without doing those things?
Yeah, of course. I mean, yes, of course. I mean, the answer is always yes, right? I'm sure, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's some of the best known kids authors probably don't do a lot of that because they don't have to. But on the other hand, I would say that it certainly adds to your artillery. Like, and I think the thing to remember is that you don't have to be the version that I am. You don't have to get out with your clown nose and do cartwheels, and not that I can do a cartwheel, but you know what I mean. Like kids like every kind of book, they like every kind of presenter as well. And you know, when I did a festival with Curly Saunders, And she's got kids like doing meditation and yoga, and she's so calm, and she talks about connection to country, and her voice is beautiful, and she reads poetry, and the kids are hanging off her every word. So it's about being genuine and being connected to your material, and kids will respond to that. They don't need me all the time or Oliver Pommermart all the time. They need variety, just like they need variety in their books. So I would say that, you know, yes, of course it's possible to have a career without doing it, but like if you're starting from scratch, what are you doing to connect to your readers? What are you doing to connect to teachers and librarians? What are you doing to get your books out there? Because the most logical and practical way is school visits and talks and stuff like that. So even if you're nervous about it, there's things that you can do. For example, I did a course with you guys at the AWC, which is all about presenting to kids. And it's about finding your strength. And
as in Nat is the presenter of that course. Yes. She actually created the course, you know, because she's so successful at presenting to kids. She's created a course about how authors can present to kids, right?
Yeah, and I created it with Kathy Tasker, who's essentially like the opposite to me, you know. She's kind of like, and it was a really good combination because it helped me to go like, okay, this is what I would do in this situation, but hey, Kathy, what would you do? Because you're obviously, you know, the person that's a bit more shy, a bit more timid, has to put a lot more kind of effort into getting up in front of people, and that's more stressful. And it was a really good balance for us to say, hey, this course is for everybody, and we're going to help you no matter where you fall on that excited but nervous, absolutely terrified, or can't wait to get on stage spectrum. We've got something that can help you discover what you're going to look like in front of kids.
And of course, the great thing for children's authors is that they have, it's an additional income stream, like a, you know, a potentially a very regular and lucrative income stream that opportunity isn't available quite in the same way to adult authors. Because, you know, there are so many schools around who are booking
the kids keep growing up and they keep coming. So like you can go back to the same school every year and do grade 4 every year, and it's a new audience. And I think, yeah, not only is it another income stream, so you've got, you know, the income from the sales of your books and the income from actually turning up to things, but turning up to things influences the income that comes through your books. So if you're going to schools, you're selling more books, you're getting more ELR and PLR, so educational lending rights, public lending rights, kids are borrowing your books more, that'll grow. Like I see the impact when I go to a school, it reflects in the money I make from my books. So it's not, some people think of it as just two separate income streams, but they really affect each other so much. And also the more books you sell, the more you get invited to schools. So it's all this like, yeah, giant circle of making it a viable career.
Now, several books ago, your first book, Secrets of the Schoolyard Millionaire, that came out, and then you have just continued to have such a regular schedule with releasing your books. Can you just paint us a picture of what, just very roughly and briefly, kind of like what your year looks like? Like at this point, I write my book. At this point, I focus on school visits. At this point, I'm thinking of the next book, you know, that kind of thing, just so that we can see how you structure really your career timeline. Well, how you roll out your career.
So, you know how we talked about not so great with structure and schedule? It's been really hard too, because obviously Secrets of a Schoolyard Millionaire came out in 2019. I did a massive publicity tour. I was doing all the stuff, and then COVID hit. So my last two books have come out during the pandemic in some form. So obviously national tours were off the cards. I had a Dymocks window cancelled because shops
who was going to go to Dymocks.
Yeah, like it just was so to be, whatever I say won't really be the norm.
True. Okay.
And then this year has been, everybody's taken the last 2 years that have been cancelled and tried to squeeze it in 6 months. So this year I am like, I can't, there's nothing left. Like I've got to write another book, and I don't know when that's going to happen. And so as much as I'd like to say I have structure, as much as I'd like to have structure, and in a normal world, maybe I would have, it's just been like all thrown up in the air over the last couple of years. So during the pandemic, lots of events have been cancelled. So I've had more writing time, I guess. But this year, I haven't even like looked at my laptop unless it's to present online, you know. So I probably won't be able to get to writing. So I would say this year it's sort of been I had a little holiday at the start, then just events until pretty much beginning of September. And then
Wow.
I'm trying to carve out September to write, because October potentially going to the UK for the launch of my second book over there. And then December, January to write again.
Okay,
but that's
so
just this year, you know.
That's an interesting point. You said you've got events basically until September. Paint us a picture of what that looks like. Are you doing, how many events are you doing a week, and what sort of events are they?
Yeah, sure. So since it all kind of kicked off, so I've done an in-residence in Cairns, in a school in Cairns. So that was like a full week. I am about to go into, so the book comes out on the 3rd of May. So I've got that kind of week is book tours and bookstores. Then I have the Sydney book launch. Then I fly to Melbourne, and then I do it all again in Melbourne. Then I have the Melbourne book launch. Then I come back. Then I've got Sydney Writers Festival that sort of stretches between like prep and the actual thing, stretches kind of almost over 2 weeks. Then at the end of that, I go, I think there's like Words on the Waves. Then I come back, and then I do a school promotional tour, because I couldn't do that before. So the one I do is at bookstores in May, and then I do a June school promotional tour.
And what does that look like? How many schools would you go to? That sort of thing.
I think we're doing 3 a day.
3 schools a day?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So they do is they try to kind of clump them together. So it'll be 3 schools that are quite close to each other, then another 3 that are in another place but close to each other. And then there's just a few festivals that kind of get me. I'm doing the Canberra CBCA conference. Then there's festivals. I'm doing a Whit Sunday Voices festivals in July. So July's got a little bit of space, but there's a few schools squeezed in there around the festivals. And then August, of course, Book Week kicks off, and I'm doing a week in Sydney, a week in Melbourne, and a week in Brisbane for Book Week. So it ends up being Book Month. And then that kind of ends early September.
So this is exhausting, just listening to this.
Yeah, my calendar is very intimidating. I look at it and I go, and I close it down so that I don't have to look at it. So yeah, hopefully a bit of a space in September to write, and then the UK potentially in October.
No wonder you find it hard to find time for writing. But are you the sort of person who has to, when they're writing, you know, sit in their usual spot, or can you write on planes, trains, and automobiles?
I can't. I'm not like one of those people can pull out my laptop and write for like 45 minutes while I'm waiting for something. I need time, but I don't need location. So I need to have a few hours to really sit down and do it. But yes, I can write on a plane. Not so much on a bus. Train, yes, absolutely on a train.
Right.
But yeah, it's more about having a chunk of time than having a location for me.
Now, Nat, I could honestly talk to you for hours, because there are so many different things that you do. But let's wrap up with your top 3 tips to aspiring writers who want to be where you are one day, but, you know, want to be a published and successful middle grade author.
Okay, number 1, I would say the thing that I've learned is learn all the rules, know the industry, know the age groups, know the things that publishers want and don't want, but then also be brave enough to do something new. So it's like, know all the things, learn all the stuff, but then take the brave steps to try stepping outside of that as well. Sometimes it won't work. Sometimes they'll say, nobody's doing that, we're not gonna, you know, there's obviously a reason the rules are there, but also don't be limited by them, I guess is what I would say. Learn them all and then maybe break them. Number 2, if you know why you're doing it. If you're doing it as a hobby, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're doing it on the side, if you're working full time and you just, you know, would love to have like a book that can say that's mine, all those reasons are valid, but know them, because if you want to make a career out of it, there's a whole lot of investment involved, time, effort, commitment, all those kind of things. And no reason for writing is right or wrong. Like, if you want to do it, you want to do it. But if you're looking at, say, like even looking at me and like what I've done over the last 4 years and thinking, oh, I can just do that on my Sunday afternoons while the kids are at sport or whatever. Not to say that you can't, but they're going to be some seriously busy Sunday afternoons.
Yes.
I dived very deeply straight away. I knew I wanted to do this like full time for a career, and I didn't want to miss that kind of opening opportunity. So I dived deep and I dived hard with a lot of commitment, time, effort, and all those other things. So I think like know where you sit and then don't have expectations of one thing if you're delivering the like time and effort on another thing.
And let's just, before you go on to your third one, when you were saying that you dived deep quite hard, because many, many years ago, you did courses at the Australian Writers Centre.
Yeah.
Was that when you decided this is going to be my full-time thing, this I'm going to learn?
No, that was me. The first one I ever did was me going, I think I really want to do this, and dipping my toe in the water with a lot of trepidation and being like, oh, please don't laugh at me. That was the first course, because I think I've done 3 or 4 with you guys.
Yeah.
So the first course was very much just, I know nothing about the industry. I know nothing about books. I don't know anything. Like, let's do this thing and see how it feels. And of course, after one course with you, I think my first course was with Judith Ridge, Writing for Kids. I think it was a more generic one before it kind of got broken up. And I just was like, oh, this is the best. I want more of this. And so then I think I did that. So it's like kept signing up and signing up and signing up. And it's through that course that I met Kathy Tasker, who became like just a mentor and friend and everything. So I think what those courses did for me was like, this is what this world looks like when I had no idea. And then got deeper and deeper and deeper into it. I guess when I say like dive deep, I mean probably when I signed the contract for Millionaire, I pretty much gave up my job very soon after. Like that's my job at the time, because I wanted to just like all in. I want to be available to do all the things. And I wanted, and also because it was a 2-book contract, I wanted to be able to write another book and faster, because Millionaire, I wrote it like on my weekends and all that, like most people do. So that's what I meant by diving deep. I would say that Australian Writers Centre gave me the foundations and the confidence and the bravery and the information that I needed to even like go, well, how do you even get to a publisher? How do you even write a kid's book? Like that was all there to really kind of build the foundations of what was to come for me.
Fantastic. And look at where you are now. But on to your third tip.
My third tip. Never lose the joy. It's like the kids, like they can feel it. They can feel it in your presence and they can feel it in your writing. If you're not really into it and you're not joyous about it, and that doesn't mean that your books have to be hilarious and about snots, and that's not what joy is. There's as much joy in books that are about, representation and even depression. Like there's joy just means that you really feel and believe in what you're doing. And it's that balance of being very business minded about what you're doing and balancing that out with the love and the passion, and finding out how those two meet in the middle so that you're still giving the joy while being smart about the business side.
Wonderful. And on that note, congratulations on your latest book. Can't wait to see what you do next. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy, Val. Right down to PowerPoint presentations, positioning, and lighting. But most importantly, how to make the kids happy.
And the organisers.
And of course, the organisers. I mean, you want to get invited back, right? I'll show you how to sneak past the gatekeepers and reach your real audience, the kid reader, yet also give the gatekeepers exactly what they want. It's a win-win for all of us, especially the kids. So join us for a mind-blowing rollercoaster ride to building on your own strengths and expertise. All aboard the fun train! Kathy!
Toot, toot.
Yeah! Toot toot!